My name is Ashley Winters, and at 29, I never expected a simple shift at the grocery store to change everything. When I saw that disabled veteran shoved to the floor, his prosthetic leg exposed, something in me snapped. My mother called it just pity drama at Sunday dinner, but she wasn't there when that Black Hawk helicopter landed in the field days later. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe in standing up for those who stood for us. Lakewood, Washington isn't exactly a thriving metropolis. Nestled close to Fort Lewis Military Base, our town mostly consists of local businesses, family homes, and a steady stream of military personnel coming and going. I've lived here my entire life, except for a brief 2-year attempt at community college in Seattle that ended when my father got sick. My apartment sits above Mrs. Kendall's garage, a cozy one-bedroom space with slanted ceilings and a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The rent is reasonable, though. And the location is perfect, just 3 blocks from Lakewood Market, where I've worked for the past 4 years. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. And after my early morning runs around the neighborhood lake, I can sit on my small balcony with coffee and feel content with my simple life. The Lakewood Market isn't fancy. It's a family-owned grocery store that's been around for decades, with aisles that are a bit too narrow and freezers that hum too loudly. But we know our customers by name. And many of them are military families who appreciate our military discount and the fact that we carry specific regional foods that remind them of home. My daily routine is predictable. Morning shift stocking shelves, afternoon at the register, and evening inventory or closing duties. Frank, our manager, is a former Marine himself who runs the store with military precision, but treats us like family. Tiffany works the register next to mine most days, always bringing homemade cookies for the break room and gossiping about the latest town drama. Then there's Brent, the new guy who started just a month ago, still learning where everything is and constantly asking questions. My mother, Catherine, doesn't understand why I'm still just a cashier at 29. She sells million-dollar homes to wealthy Seattle commuters and military officers, drives a Mercedes, and considers my job a personal failure. You're wasting your potential, she tells me at least once during our mandatory Sunday dinners at her house. Those dinners became tradition after Dad died 3 years ago from heart failure, and though I dread them, I go because she's my only family left. Dad was different. A retired Army sergeant, he taught me that character matters more than wealth. Always respect those who serve, he'd say. They've seen things and sacrificed in ways civilians can't understand. He volunteered at the VA hospital until his health declined, and I'd sometimes go with him, watching how he'd listen to veteran stories with genuine interest, regardless of their rank or background. Mom changed after Dad died. She threw herself into her real estate business, started dating wealthy men, and seemed determined to erase any trace of our middle-class military lifestyle. Sometimes I barely recognize her in her designer clothes and perfect makeup, criticizing everything from my hair to my sensible shoes. At the market, I've gotten to know many military families over the years. I've watched young wives shop alone while their husbands deploy, seen the children grow, and celebrated when families reunite. I've learned to recognize the difference between new recruits and seasoned soldiers just by how they carry themselves. And I've noticed the ones who come back different, quieter, their eyes constantly scanning for threats even in the cereal aisle. Last month, I watched a documentary about veterans with PTSD. Something about it hit me hard, maybe because it made me think of how Dad would wake up shouting sometimes, decades after his service ended. The documentary showed how many veterans struggle to reintegrate into civilian life, how physical injuries often come with invisible wounds, and how society often fails them after they've given everything. Since then, I've been more attentive to the veterans who come into our store, especially the disabled ones. You're too sensitive, my mother said when I mentioned the documentary. People make choices. If they choose the military, they know the risks. But Frank understands. When I asked if we could expand our military discount program, he immediately agreed. This town exists because of that base, he said. Least we can do is make groceries a bit more affordable. Even Tiffany, who usually cares more about her dating life than world issues, started keeping American flag stickers at her register to give to veterans. And Brent, despite being new, mentioned his cousin served 2 tours in Iraq. He came back different, he told me during a slow afternoon shift. Like part of him never left the desert. I didn't know then that understanding veterans would soon become personal in a way I never expected. I couldn't have imagined that a routine Saturday shift would lead to a confrontation that would change the course of my comfortable, predictable life. And I certainly never thought I'd stand up to my own mother because of a stranger I met at the grocery store. But life has a way of testing the values we claim to hold. And sometimes, the most important moments come disguised as ordinary days. Saturdays at Lakewood Market are always chaotic. Military families stock up for the week. Elderly residents take their time carefully selecting each item, and everyone seems to need something from the top shelf that they can't reach. That particular Saturday in April was even busier than usual because of an upcoming holiday weekend. By 2 in the afternoon, my register had a line 6 customers deep. The store was running low on shopping carts, and Frank was darting between departments trying to keep everything running smoothly. Tiffany had called in sick, leaving us short-staffed. And Brent was still too new to handle the Saturday rush efficiently. I first noticed Marcus Wilson when he entered the store. It was impossible not to. Tall and broad-shouldered despite leaning on a cane, he moved with the deliberate care of someone managing chronic pain. A service dog, a beautiful German shepherd with intelligent eyes, stayed close to his left side. Marcus wore cargo pants that couldn't quite hide the outline of his prosthetic leg, and a faded army cap pulled low over his eyes. He grabbed a hand basket rather than a cart, which immediately concerned me. How would he manage carrying groceries while using a cane and handling a service dog? I wanted to offer help but was stuck at my register with a growing line of impatient customers. For about 20 minutes, I caught glimpses of Marcus making his way slowly through the store, carefully selecting items and placing them in his increasingly heavy basket. His service dog, wearing a vest that read "Service Dog, Do Not Pet," remained perfectly behaved at his side. A few children pointed, but their parents mostly directed them away respectfully. The problem started when Pamela Thornton entered with her teenage son. Pamela was well known among the store staff as difficult. A wealthy woman from the expensive lakeside neighborhood. She treated store employees like personal servants and frequently complained about military families lowering the tone of Lakewood. As Marcus made his way toward the checkout area, basket now full and clearly heavy, Pamela rushed around a corner talking loudly on her phone about a charity gala. She slammed directly into Marcus, causing him to stumble. "Watch where you're going," she snapped, not even looking at who she'd hit. "Sorry, ma'am," Marcus said quietly, steadying himself with his cane. Pamela finally looked at him, her eyes taking in the service dog and cane. Instead of apologizing, she wrinkled her nose. "Your dog shouldn't be in a food store. It's unsanitary." "He's a service dog," Marcus explained, pointing to the vest. "He's legally permitted everywhere." I could see this happening from my register but couldn't leave my line of customers. Frank was in the back dealing with a delivery issue. No other employees were nearby. "Well, you people and your dogs need to be more careful," Pamela said dismissively. "Some of us have important things to do." The "you people" comment made my blood boil. I tried to speed through my current customer's order. Then Pamela's son, a lanky teenager with expensive headphones around his neck, came barreling around the same corner, eyes glued to his phone. He crashed directly into Marcus's bad side. The impact was too much. Marcus lost his balance, his cane clattering across the floor. He fell hard, groceries spilling everywhere as he tried to catch himself. His service dog barked once in alarm, moving protectively closer. The fall caused Marcus's pant leg to ride up, revealing the metal and plastic prosthetic that replaced his right leg below the knee. The entire store seemed to freeze, except for Pamela's son, who actually laughed. "Nice leg, Terminator," he snickered. Pamela grabbed her son's arm, but instead of apologizing, she said loudly, "Come on, Tyler. Don't stare at the unfortunate." That was it. I closed my register light, called to Brent to take over, and rushed to Marcus's side. Several items from his basket had rolled across the floor, including cans and a carton of eggs now broken and leaking. "Are you okay?" I asked, kneeling beside him. His face was flushed with humiliation, jaw clenched tight. "I'm fine," he said through gritted teeth, though it was obvious he wasn't. I started gathering his scattered groceries, then helped him to his feet. His service dog pressed against his leg, stabilizing him until I could retrieve his cane. "Thank you," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. Pamela and her son had already moved on, acting as if nothing had happened. Something inside me snapped. I handed Marcus's cane to him and marched after them. "Excuse me," I called, my voice louder than I intended. The store had grown quiet, with several customers watching. "I think you owe this gentleman an apology." Pamela turned, her expression incredulous. "Excuse me, you knocked him over and your son mocked his prosthetic leg. He's a veteran. The least you could do is apologize." "I did no such thing. He wasn't watching where he was going," Pamela said dismissively. "And how do you know he's a veteran? Because of the hat? Anyone can buy those." Marcus had managed to get back on his feet, leaning heavily on his cane. His service dog pressed protectively against his leg. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I just want to finish my shopping and go home." "No," I insisted. "This isn't right." I turned to Pamela again. "In this store, we respect everyone, especially those who served our country." Pamela's face flushed. "Are you the manager? Because I'd like to speak to whoever is in charge about your attitude." "I'm right here," Frank's voice came from behind me. He'd finally returned from the back. "I saw what happened on the security camera. Ashley is right. Your behavior was unacceptable." "This is ridiculous," Pamela huffed. "Come on, Tyler. We'll shop somewhere that values paying customers." She stormed toward the exit, her son trailing behind with a smirk. "You and your dog are banned from the store," Frank called after them. "Don't come back." After they left, the store slowly returned to normal activity. Frank helped me gather the rest of Marcus's groceries while Brent brought a replacement carton of eggs. "I'm replacing anything that was damaged," Frank told Marcus. "And your groceries today are on the house." "That's not necessary," Marcus said, his voice low. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Frank replied. "It's respect." I finished checking Marcus out personally, bagging his groceries carefully. As I handed him his receipt, I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. "Can I help you to your car?" I offered. He hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks. I'm parked out back." As we walked slowly to the parking lot, his service dog leading the way, I learned his name was Marcus Wilson. He lived alone at the edge of town, in one of the small houses near the woods. He didn't say much else, but thanked me again before carefully loading his groceries into an older model pickup truck, adapted with hand controls. "Not many people would have done that," he said finally, looking me in the eye for the first time. His eyes were deep brown and carried a sadness that made my heart ache. "Anyone would have," I replied. He shook his head. "No, they wouldn't. Trust me." "I know." He climbed into his truck with practiced movements. "Thank you, Ashley," he said, having read my name tag. I watched him drive away, feeling both angry about what had happened and oddly unsettled, as if something important had just occurred that I didn't fully understand yet. When I returned inside, Frank patted my shoulder. "Your dad would have been proud of what you did today," he said. I hadn't thought about it that way, but he was right. Dad would have done exactly the same thing. Little did I know that this brief encounter would set in motion events that would challenge everything in my carefully constructed life, starting with my relationship with my own mother. Sunday dinner at my mother's house was a ritual I couldn't escape. Every week at exactly 5:30, I'd pull into her circular driveway, park my modest Honda next to whatever luxury vehicle she currently owned, and brace myself for an evening of subtle criticism disguised as concern. Catherine Winters lived in Lakewood Heights, the affluent neighborhood overlooking the lake. Her home was a modern architectural showpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture that looked impressive but felt uncomfortable, and strategically placed art that she referred to as investments. Everything in her house was designed to impress, from the Italian marble countertops to the custom-built wine cellar in the basement. That Sunday, her new boyfriend Bradley was there. A 50-something investment banker with carefully maintained silver hair and a perpetual tan. He had been dating my mother for about 3 months. Bradley had a habit of touching my mother's back possessively and referring to her as my Catherine, which made me cringe every time. "Ashley, darling." My mother greeted me at the door with air kisses near both cheeks, careful not to actually touch me and risk smudging her makeup. "You look tired. Are those new dark circles under your eyes?" "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied, handing her the bottle of moderately priced wine I'd brought. She accepted it with a tight smile that told me it would never be served. "Bradley brought a lovely Bordeaux from his private collection," she said, confirming my suspicion. "Come say hello. He's been asking about you." Bradley was lounging on the white leather sofa, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up briefly. "The grocery store girl arrives," he said with what he probably thought was playful teasing. Dinner was served by Lucia, the housekeeper my mother had recently hired to cook and clean. The food was beautifully presented but bland, with tiny portions arranged artistically on oversized plates. Mother and Bradley discussed people I didn't know and parties I hadn't attended, occasionally asking me a question then interrupting before I could fully answer. "So, Ashley," Bradley said as Lucia cleared our main course plates. "Catherine tells me you're still enjoying your little job at the market. Thinking about management yet? Or is that too ambitious?" He chuckled as if he'd made a clever joke. I took a deep breath. "Actually, something interesting happened at work yesterday." I told them about Marcus, describing the incident in detail, feeling again the rush of anger I'd experienced watching him fall. I explained how Pamela and her son had behaved, and how Frank had banned them from the store. When I finished, I expected at least some acknowledgement that I'd done the right thing. Instead, my mother sighed dramatically. "Oh, Ashley, always getting involved in other people's business. It's just pity drama." "Pity drama?" I repeated, not understanding. "Yes, darling. Some people love to make a scene defending the downtrodden. It makes them feel important." She sipped her wine delicately. "That veteran probably tells his sad story to everyone he meets. It's what they do." I stared at her, genuinely shocked. "Mom, he didn't tell any story. He was literally knocked to the floor and humiliated." Bradley chimed in. "Your mother has a point. These veterans come back and expect everyone to treat them like heroes for doing the job they signed up for. A job that protects people like you," I responded, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "Please," my mother waved dismissively. "The military is a career choice, not a holy calling. And many of them exaggerate their injuries for attention and benefits." Exaggerate? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, he's missing part of his leg. And I'm sure he receives very generous disability payments for it," Bradley added. "Probably hasn't worked a day since coming back. Why should he, when taxpayers foot the bill?" I put down my fork, appetite completely gone. "You don't know anything about him. Dad would be appalled to hear you talk like this." My mother's face hardened at the mention of my father. "Your father isn't here, and this isn't his house. Bradley and I are simply pointing out that you have a tendency to create drama where none is needed. First that documentary that upset you so much. Now intervening in a simple accident at the store." "It wasn't an accident," I insisted. "And it's not creating drama to stand up for someone being mistreated." "Oh, Ashley," my mother sighed. "This is why you're still stocking shelves at 29. You focus on other people's problems instead of improving your own situation." "Maybe I care more about how people treat each other than what car they drive or what neighborhood they live in," I shot back. Bradley laughed. "How wonderfully naive. Tell me, does moral superiority pay the rent?" Something in me snapped. "Actually, Mom helps with the rent," I admitted, instantly regretting the words as they left my mouth. My mother's eyes narrowed. "Yes, I do. $500 every month to supplement your inadequate grocery store salary. Money you'd have no need for if you'd finished college or accepted any of the jobs I've offered to arrange for you over the years." "Wait," Bradley looked surprised. You're supporting her financially? At her age. It's just until she gets on her feet, my mother said defensively. I've been on my feet for years, I argued. The help is your choice, not my demand. A choice I'm beginning to regret, my mother replied coldly. Especially if you're going to throw it in my face during disagreements. I'm not throwing anything in your face. I'm defending a veteran who was humiliated in public. Dad would have done the same thing. Your father is gone, Ashley. My mother's voice rose sharply. And continuing to model your life after his misguided idealism won't bring him back. The room went silent. My mother never raised her voice. Image was too important to her. I think, I said carefully, pushing back my chair, that I should go. If you walk out now, my mother warned, I'm done subsidizing your mediocre lifestyle choices. No more rent assistance. No more car insurance payments. No more safety net. I stood up. If the price of your financial help is agreeing with everything you say, even when it's cruel and wrong, then I don't want it. Don't be dramatic, she scoffed. You can't afford your apartment without my help. Then I'll move somewhere I can afford. Bradley smirked. See, Catherine? This is what happens when you coddle adult children. They think life is all about following their hearts instead of making practical decisions. I turned to him. And some people think life is all about accumulating wealth and status, even if it means becoming someone who mocks disabled veterans. My mother stood up, face flushed with anger. That's enough. I will not be spoken to this way in my own home. You either apologize to Bradley and me right now, or you can forget about any further support from me. I looked at her. This elegantly dressed stranger who shared my blood, but seemingly none of my values. When had she become this person? Had Dad's death changed her so completely? Or had she always been this way beneath the surface? I'm sorry, I said quietly. Sorry that you've forgotten everything Dad believed in. Sorry that wealth has become more important to you than compassion. I walked out before she could respond, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my car keys. Tears blurred my vision as I drove home, replaying the conversation in my head. The worst part wasn't losing my mother's financial support, though that would certainly create problems. The worst part was realizing how fundamentally different our values had become, or perhaps always were. Back in my apartment, I sat on my small balcony looking at the stars, thinking about Marcus Wilson and his quiet dignity in the face of humiliation. I thought about my father, who would have been the first to help Marcus up, to confront Pamela and her son. I wondered what Marcus's life was like, alone in that house at the edge of town. Before I went to bed, I made a decision that would change everything, despite my mother's reaction. Or perhaps because of it, I would check on Marcus Wilson tomorrow after work. I would make sure he was okay. I didn't know then that this simple decision would lead to losing my apartment, straining my relationship with my mother beyond repair, and, ultimately, bringing a Black Hawk helicopter to a field in Lakewood. All I knew was that it felt right, and for the first time in years, I was choosing my own path instead of trying to navigate between my father's legacy and my mother's expectations. Finding Marcus's address wasn't difficult in our small town. Frank had his information in the store's delivery database, and though I knew it wasn't entirely proper, I wrote down his address before leaving work on Monday. He lived on Pinewood Road, a quiet street of modest homes on the outskirts of Lakewood, where the town gradually gave way to forest. After my shift, I went home and cooked a simple casserole, something my dad used to love. I wasn't sure why I felt compelled to check on Marcus, but the memory of his humiliation in the store, combined with my mother's callous reaction, had left me unsettled. Maybe I just needed to reassure myself that there were still good people worth standing up for. The drive to Marcus's house took about 15 minutes. His home was a small, single-story ranch-style house with a ramp instead of front steps. The yard was neat but simple, with no decorations or personal touches. His pickup truck sat in the driveway. I sat in my car for several minutes, suddenly second-guessing myself. What was I doing showing up uninvited at a stranger's home? Would he think I was pitying him? Exactly what my mother had accused me of. But I'd come this far, and the casserole was getting cold, so I gathered my courage and approached the door. The sound of barking came immediately after I knocked. A moment later, Marcus opened the door, his service dog at his side. He was wearing a plain gray t-shirt and sweatpants, his prosthetic leg visible below the knee. Surprise registered on his face when he saw me. "Ashley? From the grocery store?" "Hi," I said awkwardly, holding up the casserole dish. "I just wanted to check if you were okay after what happened. And I brought dinner, if you're hungry." He hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "You didn't need to do that." "I know. But I wanted to." After a moment's consideration, he stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in then." The interior of Marcus's home was as Spartan as the exterior. Functional furniture. No decorations on the walls except for a framed American flag in a shadow box. Everything was neat and organized, almost military in its precision. "This is Atlas," Marcus said, gesturing to his service dog who was watching me intently. "He's okay once he knows you're not a threat." I set the casserole on the kitchen counter and slowly offered my hand to Atlas, who sniffed it thoroughly before seemingly approving me. His tail gave a single wag. "He likes you," Marcus observed. "He doesn't like most people." "I'm honored," I replied with a small smile. "I like him too." There was an awkward silence as Marcus looked at the casserole, then back at me. "You really didn't need to check on me. I've dealt with worse than falling in a grocery store." "I know you have," I said. "But what happened wasn't right, and then my mother." I trailed off. "Your mother?" he asked. I hesitated, then explained my Sunday dinner disaster, watching his expression grow more guarded as I described my mother's pity drama comment and Bradley's remarks about veterans. When I finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Not everyone understands," he finally said. "And that's okay. I don't need them to." "I think it should be okay," I argued. "People should understand what veterans go through." Marcus gestured to the kitchen table. "Let's eat this before it gets cold. I haven't had a home-cooked meal in months." As we ate, the initial awkwardness gradually faded. Marcus didn't volunteer much information about himself at first, but he was a good listener, asking questions about my job, my apartment, and my father. He was Army too, I explained. Served 20 years, retired as a sergeant. He always said his time in the service was what made him who he was. Marcus nodded. "It changes you. For better or worse." "Were you Army as well?" I asked cautiously. He nodded. 10 years. Afghanistan mostly. I was a helicopter pilot. A pilot. I couldn't hide my surprise. Somehow I'd pictured him as infantry. A small smile crossed his face. Black Hawk pilot. Not what you expected. "I guess I didn't think about it," I admitted. "That must have been amazing." "It was, until it wasn't." His expression darkened slightly. "Had a rough landing 3 years ago. IED on the landing zone, no one detected. Lost the leg, nearly lost more." He absently reached down to rub his right thigh above the prosthetic. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded. After a moment, he continued. "Got the medical discharge. Tried going back to my hometown in Idaho, but everyone looked at me differently, either with pity or discomfort. Couldn't stand it. Found this place because it's near enough to VA services, but quiet. Been here about 2 years now." "Do you work?" I asked. "Part-time IT consulting. Remote work." Military trained me in systems management before I became a pilot. It's enough to get by. After dinner, Marcus seemed reluctant for me to leave. He showed me to a cabinet in his living room and pulled out a photo album. "My unit," he said, opening it to show me a group of soldiers standing in front of a Black Hawk helicopter. Marcus was in the center, both legs intact, grinning widely with his arm around a fellow soldier. Best group of men and women I ever knew. He flipped through more photos, telling me stories about each person. Johnson, the mechanic who could fix anything with duct tape and a paperclip. Rivera, the gunner with 5 kids who carried their pictures in his helmet. Captain Thomas, who led from the front and never asked his team to do anything he wouldn't do himself. What happened to them? I asked quietly. Marcus's face grew solemn. 3 didn't make it home. For others injured, including me. The rest are still serving, scattered around different bases now. Do you stay in touch? He shook his head. Not really. It's complicated. After the injury, I wasn't in a good place. PTSD hit hard. pushed people away. By the time I was ready to reconnect, everyone had moved on. Atlas came over and rested his head on Marcus's knee, sensing his distress. Marcus absently stroked the dog's fur. "The physical stuff is obvious," he continued, tapping his prosthetic leg. "But the other stuff, the dreams, the anxiety, the way loud noises make me feel like I'm back there, that's harder for people to understand." "Is that what Atlas helps with?" I asked. Marcus nodded. "He's trained to detect when I'm having anxiety or flashbacks. Grounds me. Wakes me from nightmares. Best battle buddy I could ask for." I stayed much longer than I'd planned. Listening to Marcus talk about his service, his adjustment to civilian life, and his struggles with both his physical disability and PTSD. He spoke matter-of-factly, without self-pity. But I could sense the isolation he felt. "My family tried," he explained. "But they couldn't handle the changes. The mood swings, the nightmares. My ex-fiancée waited through the first deployment, but left during my recovery. Said she signed up to marry a pilot, not be a caretaker." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. He shrugged. "Can't blame her. I wasn't the same person she fell in love with." Before I left, I impulsively asked, would it be okay if I visited again? The question seemed to surprise him. "You want to?" "Yes. Maybe I could bring dinner again next week." A small smile. "I'd like that." That first visit turned into a routine. Every Monday after work, I'd bring dinner to Marcus's house. Sometimes we'd watch a movie afterward, other times just talk. I told him about growing up with my military father, how his death had changed my relationship with my mother, my brief attempt at college before returning to Lakewood. Marcus gradually opened up more as well. He showed me his collection of model helicopters he built to keep his hands busy during bad days. He told me about growing up in rural Idaho, joining the Army to escape a future working in the local mine, discovering his talent for flying. I introduced him to my favorite books, and he shared his love of classic rock music. We discovered a mutual addiction to terrible science fiction movies, the kind with bad special effects and worse acting. For the first time since my father died, I felt a connection with someone who understood the values I'd been raised with. I kept these visits secret from my mother. After our blow-up at Sunday dinner, she hadn't called, and I hadn't attended the next weekly meal. The loss of her financial support was a growing concern in the back of my mind, but I pushed it away, focusing instead on my developing friendship with Marcus. 2 months passed in this way. Spring warmed into early summer. Marcus began to venture out more, sometimes meeting me for coffee at a quiet cafe near the grocery store. Once, he even came shopping during my shift, Atlas beside him, nodding hello to Frank, who gave him a military discount without being asked. I noticed small changes in Marcus. He smiled more readily. His posture became less rigid. He started talking about future plans, like possibly volunteering with other disabled veterans or taking online classes to update his IT skills. What I didn't notice was how my mother might discover my regular visits to Marcus. Lakewood was a small town, and Catherine Winters had eyes and ears everywhere through her real estate business. It was naive to think she wouldn't eventually find out. But for those 2 months, I experienced a friendship that felt more genuine than any I'd had in years. Marcus never judged me for my simple job or modest apartment. He listened when I talked about my father, understanding the complicated grief of losing someone who shaped your worldview. We were two people who recognized something familiar in each other, despite our different experiences. I didn't realize then how quickly things would fall apart, or how our friendship would be tested in ways neither of us expected. All I knew was that standing up for Marcus that day in the grocery store had led me to a connection that felt important, necessary even. And for the first time in years, I was making choices based on what I believed was right, not what would please my mother or honor my father's memory, but what felt authentic to me. The reckoning was coming, though, and when it did, it would shake the foundations of the life I had carefully built. The confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday evening, exactly 2 months and 3 days after I'd first visited Marcus's home. I was heating leftover pasta in my small kitchen when someone knocked sharply on my apartment door. 3 quick, Authoritative raps that immediately made me tense. I opened the door to find my mother standing there, perfectly put together despite the rain. Her expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been concern. "May I come in?" she asked stiffly. I stepped aside, mentally cataloging the state of my apartment. It wasn't messy, but it certainly didn't meet Catherine Winter's standards of perfection. She walked in, surveying the space with critical eyes before turning to face me. "Rebecca Mitchell saw you yesterday." Rebecca was one of my mother's real estate colleagues, a woman who specialized in high-end properties and gossiped as easily as she breathed. "Saw me where?" I asked, though I already knew. "At that coffee shop near your store. With a man and a dog." Her eyes narrowed. "The disabled veteran, I presume? The one from your pity drama." The dismissive way she said it made my jaw clench. "His name is Marcus Wilson. And yes, we're friends." "Friends," she repeated, making the words sound suspicious. "Ashley, what are you thinking? This isn't like you." "Actually, it's exactly like me. Marcus is a good person who served our country. We enjoy each other's company." My mother paced my small living area, touching nothing. "Rebecca said he's significantly older than you. That he's clearly troubled. That his disability is confronting." "He's 36, Mom. And his confronting disability is a prosthetic leg he got serving his country. As for troubled, he deals with PTSD like thousands of other veterans, including Dad." She flinched at the mention of my father, as she always did. "Your father's situation was different." "How? Because you loved him?" "Because his struggles were hidden behind closed doors where they didn't embarrass you." "That's unfair," she said sharply. "I supported your father through everything." "Until you didn't," I replied. "Until his depression and nightmares became too much for your perfect image." We stared at each other, years of unspoken tension hanging between us. My mother was the first to look away. "I didn't come here to argue about your father. I came because I'm concerned about you. This man, this Marcus, he's not part of our world." "Our world? You mean your world of luxury homes and country club memberships?" "You're right, he's not. He's real." My mother's face hardened. "I've been patient, Ashley. I gave you space after our disagreement. I continued depositing your rent money even though you skipped 2 Sunday dinners. I never asked you to keep sending money," I pointed out. "Nevertheless, I did. Because you're my daughter and I care about your well-being. But I cannot stand by and watch you throw your life away on some broken man with a sob story." The words hit me like a physical blow. He's not broken. And the only sob story is how our country treats veterans after they've sacrificed everything. "Stop with the sanctimonious speeches," my mother snapped. "This isn't about veterans or patriotism or whatever cause you've latched onto. This is about you at 29, with no career direction, no ambition. And now apparently falling for a traumatized older man who will only drag you down further." "You don't know him," I said quietly. "You've never even met him." "I don't need to. I've seen this pattern before. Vulnerable women attracted to damaged men they think they can fix. I'm not trying to fix Marcus. I respect him." My mother took a deep breath, visibly calming herself. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled, reasonable. "Ashley, I'm giving you a choice. End this inappropriate friendship, or I'm cutting you off completely. No more rent assistance, no more help with utilities, nothing." I stared at her, not quite believing what I was hearing. "You're giving me an ultimatum? About who I can be friends with?" "I'm giving you a reality check. That apartment you're standing in? You can't afford it on your grocery store salary. Your car insurance? I pay for that too. Your health insurance is still on my policy. Without my support, your comfortable little life falls apart." She was right, and we both knew it. My salary at Lakewood Market covered basic necessities, but the financial cushion my mother provided was what allowed me to live independently. "So that's your answer? Control me through money." "I prefer to think of it as incentivizing good decisions," she replied coldly. "Stop seeing that broken man, focus on building a real career, and my support continues. Keep going down this path and you're on your own." I looked around my small apartment. At the books my father had given me lined up on shelves, at the photos of him in his uniform that my mother had removed from her home, but I kept proudly displayed. I thought about Marcus, who had lost so much but still found the courage to build a new life. Then I'm on my own, I said quietly. My mother's composure slipped for just a moment, surprise flickering across her face. She hadn't expected me to choose independence over security. Don't be foolish, she warned. You have no idea how difficult life can be without a safety net. Maybe it's time I found out. She stared at me for a long moment, then reached for her designer handbag. Very well. Don't come crying to me when reality hits. She walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. This man won't save you, Ashley. When this all falls apart, remember that I tried to protect you. After she left, I sat on my sofa for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. I'd effectively cut ties with my only family. For what? A friendship that was barely 2 months old? But it wasn't just about Marcus. It was about standing up for what I believed was right. About refusing to be controlled by my mother's money and expectations. It was about becoming the person my father had raised me to be, someone who valued character over comfort. The reality of my financial situation hit quickly. The following week, I received a notice from Mrs. Kendall that my rent was increasing by $500, the exact amount my mother had been contributing. When I asked why, she awkwardly explained that Catherine Winters had been supplementing my rent directly, with the understanding that Mrs. Kendall would keep the arrangement confidential. I did the math repeatedly, trying to make my budget work. Even cutting out every non-essential expense, I couldn't afford the new rent amount. I would need to find a cheaper place to live fast. Work became another source of stress. Distracted by my housing crisis, I made careless mistakes. I mixed up orders, gave incorrect change, and once accidentally knocked over an entire display of canned goods. Frank noticed, of course. Everything okay, Ashley? He asked after my third mistake of the day. This isn't like you. I considered lying, but Frank had always been straight with me. My mom cut me off financially, I admitted. I can't afford my apartment anymore, and I'm not sure where I'm going to live. Frank's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. But I have to be honest, your performance lately. I might need to reduce your hours if things don't improve. I understand, I said. Mortified. It won't happen again. But it did happen again. My focus was shattered by constant worry. Where would I live? How would I afford deposits on a new place? Would I need to find a second job? The stress affected my sleep, which only made my work performance worse. Through it all, I maintained my Monday visits to Marcus, though I didn't tell him about my troubles. He had enough to deal with without adding my problems to his plate. But Marcus was perceptive. Something's wrong, he said one evening as we sat on his porch after dinner. You've been quiet lately. Distracted. I'm fine, I insisted. Just tired from work. He studied me with those penetrating brown eyes that seemed to see right through pretense. Ashley, you've listened to me talk about my problems for 2 months. I think I can return the favor. Maybe it was the genuine concern in his voice, or maybe I was simply tired of pretending everything was fine. Either way, the entire story came pouring out. My mother's ultimatum. The loss of financial support, my housing crisis, the problems at work. So basically, I concluded, I have 2 weeks to find a new place I can afford on reduced hours, with no savings for a deposit. But other than that, everything's great. I attempted a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Your mother cut you off because of me, he finally said, his voice heavy with realization. No, I insisted. She cut me off because I refused to let her control my life. You're just the convenient excuse. Still, he said, if we hadn't become friends, then I'd still be living a half-life, trying to please a woman who's never satisfied while ignoring what I know is right. I don't regret our friendship, Marcus. He was silent again, seeming to wrestle with something internally. Finally, he said, I have a spare room. It's small, just an office really, but there's space for a bed. You could stay here until you figure things out. The offer was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't impose like that. It's not imposing if I'm offering, he countered. And it makes sense. Your place is too expensive. My place has extra space. Simple solution. But it wasn't simple. Moving in with Marcus, even temporarily, would cross a line in our friendship that couldn't be uncrossed. What would people think? What would it mean for our relationship, which until now had been built on mutual respect and careful boundaries? I appreciate the offer, I said carefully. But I need to handle this myself. His expression changed. A flash of hurt quickly masked. Because you don't want to accept help from a disabled vet? Afraid people will think you're my caretaker. What? No, that's not it at all. Then what? Too proud to accept help when you need it? Or is it something else about me specifically? The conversation was spiraling in a direction I hadn't anticipated. Marcus, this isn't about you being disabled or a veteran or anything else. It's about me needing to solve my own problems. Even if the solution is staring you in the face? He stood up abruptly. His movements stiff with the anger I'd never seen from him before. You know what? Forget I offered. You're right. You should handle it yourself. He went inside, letting the screen door slam behind him. I sat on the porch, stunned by the sudden argument. After a few minutes, I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Atlas barked once, but Marcus didn't appear. I drove home feeling worse than before. Not only was I facing homelessness, but I'd somehow damaged the one friendship that had been keeping me afloat emotionally. The next 3 days passed in a blur of apartment hunting between shifts. Everything in my price range was either far from work or in neighborhoods that made me uncomfortable about coming home late at night. Frank reduced my hours as threatened, making my financial situation even more precarious. I tried calling Marcus twice, but he didn't answer. I left messages apologizing for the misunderstanding, explaining that I valued our friendship too much to risk complicating it, but the words sounded hollow even to me. The truth was I was scared of depending on someone else, of what others might think, of how quickly Marcus had become important to me. By Friday, I was exhausted, demoralized, and no closer to finding a solution. I had exactly 9 days until I needed to be out of my apartment, nowhere to go, and a friendship that might be irreparably damaged. That evening, as I sat surrounded by apartment listings I couldn't afford, someone knocked on my door. Thinking it might be my mother, come to gloat or perhaps offer a conditional olive branch. I opened it without enthusiasm. Instead, I found Marcus standing there, Atlas at his side. He looked as tired as I felt. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, noticing that he seemed to be leaning more heavily on his cane than usual. Had he been taking proper care of himself these past few days? "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak. I overreacted. "Your living situation is your business, and I had no right to get angry when you turned down my offer." "No, I'm sorry," I replied. "I didn't explain myself well. It wasn't about you being disabled or me being proud. It was about—" I struggled to find the right words. "About boundaries," he finished for me. "I get it. We've built something good. And moving in together, even temporarily, could complicate things." "Exactly," I said, relieved he understood. "Plus, I've spent my whole life being financially dependent on my mother. I don't want to just transfer that dependence to someone else, even someone I care about." He nodded, then glanced around at the apartment listings scattered across my coffee table. "Any luck?" I shook my head. Everything's either too expensive or too far from work. And now Frank's cut my hours, so I have even less income to work with. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "I have another idea. One that doesn't involve you moving in with me, but might help until you get on your feet." "What is it?" "Let me make a call first," he said. "There's someone you should meet." I didn't understand what he meant, but I trusted him enough to nod. "Okay." I didn't know then that his call would set in motion events that would change everything, bringing a Black Hawk helicopter to Lakewood and reshaping my understanding of what community truly means. 3 days passed without word from Marcus. I tried calling once but got voicemail again. My anxiety grew with each passing day. The weekend came and went, and suddenly I had less than a week before I needed to vacate my apartment. Monday morning arrived with a text message from Marcus. "Are you free this afternoon around 4? There's something you need to see." I replied immediately, yes. What is it? Just meet me at my place. And wear comfortable shoes. The cryptic message left me curious and slightly concerned. Had Marcus found me a place to live? A job opportunity? I couldn't imagine what he had planned that required comfortable shoes. The day dragged by at work. Frank seemed pleased with my improved focus, not knowing my mind was actually racing with possibilities. By 3:30, I couldn't stand it anymore and asked to leave early. To my surprise, Frank agreed without hesitation. Marcus was waiting on his porch when I arrived, Atlas beside him. He was dressed more formally than usual, wearing a button-up shirt instead of his typical t-shirt. A small duffel bag sat at his feet. Ready for an adventure? He asked as I approached. I guess. Are you going to tell me what this is about? He shook his head. Better to show you. Trust me? It was a loaded question after our recent argument, but I nodded. I trust you. We got into his truck, Atlas settling in the back seat. Marcus drove us out of town, taking the old highway that led toward the military base. After about 15 minutes, he turned onto a dirt road I'd never noticed before. It wound through trees before opening onto a large, grassy field. Where are we? I asked, seeing several other vehicles parked at the edge of the field. People stood in small groups, some in civilian clothes, others in military uniforms. Property owned by a veterans group, Marcus explained as he parked. Used for various events and gatherings. As we got out of the truck, a tall man in uniform approached. His nameplate read Thomas, and the insignia on his uniform marked him as a high-ranking officer. Wilson, he greeted Marcus with a firm handshake. Good to see you walking better than last time. Physical therapy's helping, Marcus replied. Commander Thomas, this is Ashley Winters, the woman I told you about. Thomas turned to me, extending his hand. Ms. Winters. Heard a lot about you. Thank you for what you did for one of our own. Confused, I shook his hand. I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have helped Marcus after he fell. Thomas and Marcus exchanged a look. That's not what I heard, Thomas said. And in my experience, most people walk by when someone needs help. Especially when it means confronting others. Before I could respond, a distant thumping sound became audible. It grew louder rapidly, a rhythmic beating that I felt in my chest before I fully heard it. Right on time, Thomas said, checking his watch. Marcus turned to me, a slight smile on his face. You might want to step back a bit. The sound became deafening as a military helicopter appeared over the tree line. Not just any helicopter, a Black Hawk, its massive rotors churning the air as it descended toward the field. The wind whipped around us, forcing me to shield my eyes. With practiced precision, the helicopter landed in the center of the field. As the rotors slowed, several uniformed soldiers jumped out, moving with the easy confidence of people who had done this countless times. What is happening? I asked Marcus, raising my voice to be heard over the dying engine. Remember when I told you about my unit? The people I served with. He gestured toward the helicopter. That's them. Or some of them anyway. The ones still serving. One by one, the soldiers approached, greeting Marcus with the combination of respect and casual familiarity that comes from having faced danger together. They called him Hawk or Wilson, slapping his back and shaking his hand vigorously. Each one also took time to introduce themselves to me, thanking me in ways that made me increasingly uncomfortable. You don't understand what you did, a woman named Rodriguez told me. Marcus hasn't let any of us visit since his injury. Wouldn't take calls. After what happened at that grocery store and your friendship afterward, he finally reached out. As the group moved toward a picnic area set up at the edge of the field, Commander Thomas pulled me aside. Wilson was the best pilot I ever flew with, he said quietly. That last mission, he saved everyone he could. We took fire on approach to an extraction point. Wilson could have aborted, but he had men on the ground. He landed anyway, took a direct hit while the last soldier was boarding, shielded the crew with his own body, lost his leg, but saved 5 lives that day. I looked over at Marcus, who was laughing with his former crew, Atlas vigilant at his side. He'd never told me the details of his injury. He's not the same since coming back, Thomas continued. None of us are. But Wilson took it harder than most. Isolated himself. Refused help. We tried to reach out, but he shut everyone down. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you got through when no one else could. And because we take care of our own. Thomas handed me an envelope. Open it later. For now, come meet the rest of the unit. They're all eager to thank the woman who brought their pilot back. The next 2 hours were surreal. I listened to stories about Marcus from the people who knew him best, his courage under fire, his terrible jokes during long flights, his steadfast leadership. They talked about him with a respect bordering on reverence, a side of him I'd never seen. As the sun began to set, Commander Thomas called for everyone's attention. Ms. Winters, he said formally, it's come to our attention that you're facing some challenges due to your support of our brother Marcus. The military community takes care of its own, and as far as we're concerned, you're now part of that community. He gestured to a woman in civilian clothes who stepped forward. This is Sergeant Major Weber, retired. She manages housing for military families on base. There's a temporary apartment available in the family section. It's yours until you find something permanent. Rent-free. I was speechless. Marcus stood beside me, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and uncertainty, as if he wasn't sure how I'd react. I can't accept that, I finally managed. I'm not military. No, but you supported one of ours when he needed it, Thomas replied. That's good enough for us. There's more, Weber added. The Family Support Center on base needs an administrative assistant. The pay's better than retail, with benefits. Job's yours if you want it. I looked at Marcus, who shrugged. I made one call, he said. All this? This is what military family does for each other. I just told them what happened. They did the rest. As the group dispersed and the helicopter crew prepared for departure, Marcus pulled me aside. I know it's overwhelming. And I know you value your independence. You can say no to all of it. But I wanted you to see that you're not alone. That there are people who value what you did, not just for me, but for what it represents. Thomas approached us one last time before boarding the helicopter. Wilson was our best, he said to me. What happened to him broke something in all of us. Seeing him today, hearing him laugh again, you did that. He turned to Marcus. Hawk, you're always welcome back. Consultant position is still open whenever you're ready. As the Black Hawk lifted off, its powerful downdraft bending the grass across the field, I finally opened the envelope Thomas had given me. Inside was a key, a base pass, and a note. Welcome to the family. Move in whenever you're ready. The drive back to town was quiet, both of us processing the events of the afternoon. Finally, as we neared Lakewood, I asked, why didn't you tell me? About saving those soldiers. About being decorated. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. That's not who I am anymore. Or not all of who I am. And I didn't want you to see me differently. I do see you differently, I admitted. But not in the way you think. I see someone even braver than I realized. Not just in war, but in peace. It takes courage to start over, to build a new life when the old one is gone. He glanced at me. Does this mean you'll accept their offer? The housing? The job? I thought about my mother's ultimatum, about the impossible task of finding affordable housing, about the community of people I'd met today who valued character and loyalty above status or wealth. Yes, I said finally. But only temporarily. Until I can stand on my own again. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all day. That's all they're offering. A hand up. Not a handout. There's a difference. As we pulled up to my soon-to-be former apartment, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The Black Hawk landing wasn't just a dramatic gesture. It was a visible symbol of an invisible community I was now connected to, people who understood sacrifice, who valued loyalty and service above wealth or status. For the first time since my father died, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Not because of family obligation or shared history, but because of shared values. I had stood up for what was right, regardless of the cost, and found a community that honored that choice. Marcus walked me to my door, Atlas following dutifully. Thank you, I said, the words inadequate for what I was feeling. "No," he replied. "Thank you for seeing me as a person, not just a disability. For being there when I needed someone. For reminding me that I'm still part of something bigger than myself." As he turned to leave, I impulsively reached out and hugged him. He stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, returning the embrace carefully. "See you tomorrow?" I asked as we separated. He nodded. "I'll help you pack." I watched him walk back to his truck, his gait uneven but determined, Atlas a steady presence at his side. The Black Hawk had come and gone, but its impact remained. Something had been set in motion that day, a new beginning, a second chance, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't things at all, but the connections we forge when we have the courage to stand up for what's right. 6 months can change everything. As I arrange flowers on my dining table, preparing for tonight's dinner guests, I barely recognize my life from half a year ago. My apartment on the military base is modest but comfortable, with large windows that flood the space with natural light. Photos of my father in uniform now share wall space with pictures of new friends and memorable moments from recent months. The job at the Family Support Center turned out to be perfect for me. I help military spouses find employment, connect families with resources, and organize community events. The skills I developed at the grocery store, patience, problem-solving, attention to detail, serve me well in this new role. My salary is nearly double what I made at Lakewood Market, with benefits that include health insurance and a retirement plan. For the first time in my adult life, I'm completely financially independent. Frank understood when I gave my notice, even seemed proud of my new direction. "Your dad always said you'd find your path," he told me during my last shift. "I think this is it." Tiffany cried and made me promise to visit. Brent, no longer the new guy, wished me luck with awkward sincerity. The military community embraced me with unexpected warmth. Weekly potlucks, volunteer opportunities, and support groups became part of my routine. I learned the unique challenges military families face, the stress of deployments, the frequent moves, the difficulty maintaining careers while following a service member from base to base. My respect for these resilient families grew with each story I heard. Marcus became a regular fixture in my new life. He started volunteering at the Veterans Center on base, mentoring other disabled veterans transitioning to civilian life. His experience as both a decorated officer and someone who struggled with PTSD made him uniquely qualified to help others navigate the complex journey from soldier to civilian. Our friendship deepened through shared meals, movie nights, and long conversations. We developed inside jokes, favorite restaurants, and the comfortable rhythm that comes from genuine connection. Atlas even had a designated spot on my couch, a cushion I kept covered with a blanket specifically for him. The community dinners we attended evolved into gatherings we hosted together. Tonight would be the largest yet, 15 people coming to my apartment for a potluck celebration of Marcus's new part-time position as a consultant for helicopter training programs. As I checked the oven timer, a knock at the door signaled the first guest's arrival. To my shock, when I opened it, my mother stood there looking uncomfortable and out of place in her designer clothes. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I stepped aside wordlessly, too surprised to respond. Catherine Winters had not contacted me since our confrontation 6 months ago. The complete silence had been painful but not unexpected. She looked around my apartment with curious eyes. "It's nice," she said, seeming genuinely surprised. "Cozy. What are you doing here, Mom?" I finally asked. She held up a small gift bag. "I heard about your dinner celebrating Marcus's new position. I thought I might attend? If that's okay." "How did you even know about it?" "Frank told me." "I've been asking about you." She looked down. "I've been asking about you for months, actually." Before I could respond, another knock announced more guests. Soon the apartment filled with people, Marcus's former unit members who were stationed nearby, colleagues from the Family Support Center, new friends from the base community. Marcus arrived with Atlas and a homemade apple pie, his face lighting up when he saw the gathering. I introduced him to my mother, watching carefully as they shook hands. Catherine was polite but reserved, clearly uncomfortable in this military environment so different from her usual social circles. As the evening progressed, I observed my mother watching Marcus interact with others. She saw how people deferred to his opinion, listened when he spoke, laughed at his dry humor. She witnessed the respect he commanded not for his wealth or status, but for his character and sacrifice. During dinner, Commander Thomas raised a glass to Marcus. To the best damn pilot I ever flew with, and a man who continues to serve long after hanging up the uniform. The consulting position is just making official what you've been doing for months, sharing your expertise and experience with the next generation. Everyone cheered. And Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, uncomfortable with praise as always. I'm just grateful for the opportunity, he said. And for the people who helped me remember who I am. His eyes met mine briefly across the table. After dinner, as people broke into smaller conversation groups, my mother approached me in the kitchen where I was loading the dishwasher. Ashley, she said quietly, could we talk? Privately? We stepped out onto my small balcony, the night air cool against my skin. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I was wrong, she finally said. The words clearly difficult for her. About Marcus. About you. About many things. I waited, not ready to make this easy for her. Seeing him tonight, how these people respect him, how he carries himself despite his disability, it's not what I expected. She looked out at the base lights twinkling in the distance. I had prejudices I didn't recognize. Why now, Mom? It's been 6 months without a word from you. She turned to face me fully. Because I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid that acknowledging my mistake meant acknowledging other mistakes. Like how I treated your father when he came back from his last deployment. This was unexpected. My parents rarely argued, at least not in front of me. Your father changed after that last tour. She continued. The nightmares, the anxiety, the depression. I didn't understand it. I thought he was choosing to be difficult, choosing to pull away from me. Her voice cracked slightly. I made it about me, when it was never about me at all. Mom, Dad loved you, I said, softening despite myself. I know he did. But I failed him when he needed me most. I couldn't handle his PTSD. His struggles. It scared me to see him vulnerable when he'd always been my rock. She wiped away a tear. When he died, I buried that guilt along with him. I remade myself into someone who wouldn't be hurt again, someone focused on status and security rather than the messy parts of life. And when I befriended Marcus, it brought everything back. The guilt, the fear, the memory of how I failed your father. So I lashed out, tried to control you the way I wish I could have controlled what happened with him. She shook her head. It was wrong. I see that now. We stood in silence, the sounds of laughter and conversation filtering through the balcony door. Finally, I asked, what changed your mind? Frank, actually. I went to the market to ask about you, and he told me what you'd been doing. How you'd found your place here, how you were thriving. He suggested I see for myself. She gestured toward the apartment. And he was right. You look happy. Purposeful. More like yourself than I've seen in years. I am happy, I confirmed. This community has become a second family to me. I can see that. She hesitated. Is there room in your life for your first family? For me? I'd like to try again, if you'll let me. No strings attached this time. No financial control. Just a mother who wants to know her daughter again. The request was so vulnerable, so unlike the controlling woman who had given me ultimatums 6 months ago, that I found myself nodding. We can try. Slowly. Relief washed over her face. That's all I ask. When we rejoined the party, Marcus caught my eye questioningly. I gave him a small smile and nod to indicate things were okay. Later, as guests began to leave, he and my mother had a brief, private conversation in the corner of the living room. I couldn't hear what was said, but when they finished, both seemed at peace. The last guest to leave was Marcus. As he collected Atlas's water bowl from the kitchen, I asked, what did my mother say to you? He considered the question before answering. She apologized for judging me without knowing me. And she thanked me for being there for you when she wasn't. He shrugged. I told her we were there for each other. That's what friendship is. Just friendship. I asked before I could stop myself. A slow smile spread across his face. For now. But I'm open to renegotiating terms. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past 6 months. From a simple act of kindness in a grocery store to a completely transformed life. The lesson wasn't just about standing up for others, but about standing up for myself. About recognizing that true value isn't measured in bank accounts or job titles, but in the courage to live according to your principles, even when it costs you something. 3 years ago, I lost my father, the person who taught me those principles. 6 months ago, I nearly lost my way trying to please a mother who had forgotten them. But in helping Marcus, in seeing him not as a disability or a symbol, but as a person worthy of dignity and respect, I found my own path forward. The military community became the family I didn't know I needed. Marcus became the friend who reminded me who I truly was. And I became someone my father would have recognized, someone who doesn't just talk about values, but lives them, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thanks for tonight. Dinner at my place next week? I'm cooking this time. I smiled as I typed my reply. It's a date. And it was. A new beginning. A second chance. A reminder that sometimes the most unexpected events, a veteran falling in a grocery store, a mother's ultimatum, a Black Hawk landing in a field, can lead us exactly where we need to be. Have you ever stood up for someone when it wasn't easy? Or found friendship in an unexpected place? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey touched your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like this, and share with someone who might need a reminder that small acts of courage can change lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sometimes the most meaningful connections come when we're brave enough to stand up for what's right, even when we stand alone.